On Christmas Eve, 1945, in the quiet hills of Fayetteville, West Virginia, a fire erupted at the Sodder family home. George and Jennie Sodder escaped with 4 of their 10 children, but 5 were still inside. 15-year-old Martha, 12-year-old Jennie, 8-year-old Betty, 9-year-old Louis, and 5-year-old Maurice. The flames consumed the house by morning, yet when firefighters and neighbors searched the ruins, they found no bones, no teeth, no trace of the children, not a single identifiable remains. In a fire that hot, experts say bones should have survived, but there was nothing, just ash and silence. For the Sodders, that silence would haunt them for the rest of their lives and spark one of America's most chilling unsolved mysteries. The night of the fire was filled with strange coincidences. The family's phone line was cut. Their ladder truck, used for rescues, was mysteriously missing from the fire station. Neighbors called for help, but no firefighters arrived in time. Even more bizarre, the fire burned with unnatural intensity, yet nearby objects like a metal bread box and glass bottles remained intact. How could a blaze hot enough to vaporize 5 human bodies leave delicate items untouched? Jennie Sodder later claimed the fire didn't behave like ordinary flames. It hissed, sparked, and flared like an explosion. She insisted someone had used an accelerant, but without evidence, authorities ruled it an accident. The Sodders disagreed. They believed their children never died that night, and they would spend the next 30 years trying to prove it. Jennie Sodder became obsessed with finding answers. She hired private investigators, placed ads in newspapers across Europe, and even traveled to Italy, convinced her children had been kidnapped and taken overseas. Her suspicion wasn't baseless. Days before the fire, George had argued with a stranger who warned, "Your house will go up in smoke, and your children will burn like the Italians they are." Anti-Italian sentiment ran high in 1940s America, and the Sodders were immigrants. Then came the clues. Their family dog, always loud, vanished without a trace. A witness saw a car idling near the house that night. And most chilling, a ladder normally kept against the house was found lying in the yard, far from the flames. To Jennie, these weren't accidents. They were signs of a cover-up. And she refused to let the world forget her missing children. In 1949, 4 years after the fire, a photo arrived at the Sodder home. It showed 5 young people standing on a city street, 3 girls and 2 boys, bearing a haunting resemblance to the missing siblings. On the back, a handwritten note, "Your kids are safe." The image was blurry, but Jennie was certain. She took it to police, but they dismissed it. Undeterred, she kept the photo on her wall for decades. She also received anonymous calls, whispers in Italian, hang-ups, cryptic messages. One caller simply said, "They're alive." The Sodders even hired a former spy to track leads across the US and Europe. Despite dead ends, they never gave up. George died in 1969, still searching. Jennie passed in 1989. Her final wish, to know what happened to her children. The mystery remains unsolved. And that photo? Never authenticated, never explained. Today, the Sodder property is marked by a memorial garden and a billboard reading 5 missing Sodder children. To this day, no remains have ever been found. Modern fire experts say complete incineration of 5 bodies is nearly impossible without industrial equipment. Yet no evidence of foul play was ever proven. Some believe the children escaped through a basement tunnel and were taken. Others think they perished, and the lack of remains was due to poor search methods. But the truth? It's still out there. Decades later, new theories emerge online about secret adoptions, witness intimidation, even government involvement. For true crime followers, the Sodder case isn't just a tragedy. It's a puzzle with missing pieces, and the world is still trying to solve it. What do you think really happened? One of the most haunting details wasn't found in the ashes. It was heard in the dark. Neighbors reported hearing voices shouting from the burning house, as if someone was trapped inside. But George Sodder swore all his children were asleep upstairs when the fire started. Then came the ladder. It was stored upright against the house, the family's only escape route. Yet after the fire, it lay flat in the yard, far from the flames. Fire experts say a collapsing roof might knock it down, but this ladder was undamaged. why wasn't it used? And why, if the children were awake and screaming, didn't they climb down? Jennie believed they never made it to the window. Someone, she insisted, had already taken them before the fire even began. Investigators later discovered something even more disturbing. The fire didn't start in the house at all. A coal-burning furnace in the basement was blamed, but it hadn't been used that night. George had shut it off due to the holiday. So what ignited the blaze? Witnesses reported seeing flickering lights near the roof, not the basement. One man claimed he saw a small object thrown onto the roof before flames erupted. Could it have been a Molotov cocktail? The Sodders thought so. They pointed to local resentment. George's outspoken criticism of Mussolini made him a target in a town with strong fascist sympathies. In 1945, that wasn't just politics, it was dangerous. Was the fire an act of revenge? A warning that turned deadly? Or was it all a diversion to cover a kidnapping? Then there's the matter of the fuse box. After the fire, investigators found it completely destroyed, melted beyond recognition. But electricians later said that kind of damage only happens in extremely high-temperature industrial fires. A standard house fire shouldn't melt copper wiring like that. Stranger still, the family's Christmas lights were still plugged in and working the next morning. How could the electrical system survive if the fuse box was vaporized? Jennie took this as proof of sabotage. She believed someone had rigged the house to burn fast and hot, using chemicals or explosives to erase all evidence. And if the goal was to make it look like an accident, it worked perfectly. The official report closed the case within weeks. But for the Sodders, closure was never an option. In the decades that followed, dozens of people came forward claiming to be one of the missing Sodder children. A woman in Texas said she was Martha, raised by a wealthy couple who bought her from kidnappers. A man in New York insisted he was Louise, taken after being told his parents died in a fire. Most leads led nowhere. But one was different. In the 1960s, a private eye tracked a lead to a military base in Germany. There, a young woman matching Betty's description served as a translator. She refused to speak to investigators, but she didn't deny it either. The trail went cold. Today, DNA technology could solve the mystery, if remains or living relatives surfaced. But the Sodder grandchildren, who still maintain the memorial, say they'll never stop looking. Because without proof, hope remains. And so does the doubt. Even the fire department's silence speaks volumes. The chief at the time admitted years later that his crew never received the emergency call, despite multiple neighbors dialing. The phone lines, it seemed, were cut just before the fire started. And when volunteers tried to fight the blaze with hoses, the water pressure dropped to nothing. Was it sabotage? Or just a series of tragic failures on a cold Christmas night? The Sodders believed it was orchestrated. They paid for their own investigation, hired experts, and published pamphlets demanding answers. They even offered a reward, $5,000 in 1950s money, for information. Still, no one came forward with proof. Today, the case remains open in the hearts of true crime seekers, not because of what was found, but because of what was never there. 5 children and the truth about where they went. One detail rarely mentioned: the Sodder home had a basement. And that night, George claimed he checked it before bed. Empty. But after the fire, neighbors reported seeing a figure emerge from the basement door just before dawn, carrying something large. When questioned, local authorities dismissed it as imagination. Yet Jennie never forgot it. She believed the basement held the key, perhaps a hidden exit or even a tunnel used by bootleggers during Prohibition. The house was old, built in the 1920s, and rumors swirled it once stored illegal liquor. Could that same passage have been used to smuggle 5 children out silently? No tunnel was ever found, but the foundation's remains were never fully excavated. To this day, the site's underground secrets remain buried just like the truth. Another anomaly: the family's Christmas tree. It stood in the living room, fully decorated with real candles, common in 1945. Investigators blamed it for starting the fire. But George swore he extinguished every candle before bed. And if a candle had ignited the tree, the fire would have spread slowly, giving time to escape. Instead, the blaze exploded upward in minutes, so fast that even the upstairs windows shattered inward, not outward. Fire experts say that only happens with explosive accelerants. Adding to the mystery, melted glass was found far from the house, suggesting extreme heat, but the nearby Christmas wreath on the front door was untouched. How could fire rage so violently in one room and leave another pristine? The inconsistencies haunted forensic analysts for decades. Then there's the photo again, the one from 1949. Digital analysts who later reviewed it noted something chilling. The 2 boys in the image wear identical watches. Not just similar, exact matches, down to the strap. In post-war America, that kind of luxury item for children was rare. Even more telling, the background shows a European-style tram, possibly in Switzerland or northern Italy. The girls' hairstyles match 1950s European fashion, not American trends. Could this be proof they were alive years later? Skeptics say it's a hoax, but why would someone go to such lengths? The Sodders believed it was real, and that someone knew their children were out there, hidden in plain sight, living under new names, never allowed to come home. In 1952, a letter arrived postmarked from Central America. It was written in broken English, but the message was clear. Your children live. They remember Christmas Eve. No return address, no signature, just those words. Jennie kept it in her Bible for the rest of her life. Around the same time, a Florida newspaper reported a tip. A man matching George Sodder's description was seen arguing with officials at an orphanage, but no record exists. The Sodders also received a call from a woman claiming her son played with a boy named Maurice in a Catholic school in Chicago. When they followed up, the school denied it. But the boy had transferred suddenly, overnight. Coincidence? Or another thread in a web spun to hide 5 lives stolen in the night? Modern researchers have revisited the case with new eyes. In 2019, a team from the National Fire Protection Association reviewed the evidence. Their conclusion? A standard house fire could not account for the total absence of skeletal remains. Even in intense blazes, bone fragments survive. The fact that none were found, even in the basement crawl space, suggests the children may not have been in the house when it burned. Could they have been taken earlier that evening? Some point to a neighbor's testimony. Around 9 p.m., they saw the Sodder kids playing near the road, then getting into a dark sedan. George, however, insisted all children were in bed by 8:30. Was he mistaken? Or was part of the story hidden, even from him? The truth may lie in memories long buried, or in a grave with no name. One of the most overlooked clues came from a delivery driver. On December 23rd, the day before the fire, he dropped off coal at the Sodder home. He later told police he saw 2 unfamiliar men speaking with George near the garage. They drove off in a black sedan with no license plate. At the time, it meant nothing. But after the fire, Jennie recalled George mentioning troublemakers asking odd questions about the kids' routines. Were they casing the house? In 1945, West Virginia had no surveillance, no databases, just word of mouth. That black sedan vanished into history. Yet decades later, a retired FBI agent claimed the Bureau had quietly flagged the Sodder case as possible domestic abduction with foreign ties. The file was sealed. To this day, it's never been released. Why? The Sodders also noticed something strange about the ashes. Days after the fire, Jennie sifted through debris and found a small, intact Christmas present, wrapped in paper, unburned. Inside was a doll, meant for 5-year-old Maurice. How did it survive when the roof collapsed and the walls melted? Fire experts say radiant heat should have scorched everything within feet. Yet this gift sat just yards from the epicenter. Even more bizarre, the family Bible kept on a shelf near the tree was completely untouched. Pages dry, ink sharp. These weren't signs of a raging inferno. They were signs of a fire that behaved selectively, unnaturally. Jennie kept the doll on her dresser until she died. She said it was proof her children never burned. They were gone before the flames ever started. In the 1970s, a deathbed confession surfaced. A man named Vincent Scolaro, once linked to organized crime in West Virginia, allegedly told a priest he helped remove the Sodder children as a favor to a local official who feared George's political influence. Scolaro claimed the kids were drugged, driven to New York, and placed in separate homes under new identities. The priest reported it, but without a recording or written statement, it was dismissed as hearsay. Still, investigators found Scolaro had ties to a known child trafficking ring operating out of Baltimore in the 1940s. And George Sodder had publicly accused that same ring of targeting immigrant families. Was this guilt? Or just another ghost in a story full of them? The Sodder grandchildren have since petitioned the Vatican for the confession records. So far, they've received no reply. Then there's the question of motive. Why take 5 children? One theory points to George's past. Before moving to West Virginia, he testified against a powerful bootlegging syndicate in Pennsylvania. He was placed under informal protection, but when he spoke out again in 1944, that protection vanished. His children could have been leverage, or worse, punishment. Others believe it was ideological. George openly mocked fascism at a time when pro-Mussolini groups still operated in Appalachia. A local chapter of the Black Legion, A violent secret society had been active nearby. Did they send a message by making 5 children disappear? The FBI investigated the group in 1946, but closed the file, citing insufficient evidence. To the Sodders, that wasn't justice. It was silence. Today, the Sodder case still draws attention from cold case units and amateur sleuths alike. In 2022, a ground-penetrating radar scan of the property revealed an anomaly beneath the old foundation. An unmarked cavity, roughly the size of a small room. Experts urged excavation, but the family declined, fearing desecration. Still, the finding reignited speculation. Was there a hidden bunker? A smuggling route? Or simply a collapsed root cellar? Whatever it is, it's never been opened. And while DNA technology advances without remains or living claimants, the mystery stays frozen in time. Yet every December 24th, candles are lit at the memorial site, not just in memory, but in hope. Because as long as the truth is unseen, the search continues. In 1968, George Sodder received a phone call that changed everything. A man with a thick accent said, "Your son Louis works at a shipyard in Baltimore. He remembers you." Before George could respond, the line went dead. He drove to Baltimore the next day, visiting every shipyard for weeks. He showed photos, asked questions, even stood at gates hoping to spot a familiar face. Nothing. But years later, a retired dock worker came forward. He recalled a quiet young man in the late 1960s who bore a striking resemblance to Louis Sodder, and who vanished after learning someone was asking about him. Was it him? Or just another echo of a ghost story? The Sodder family believed it was real. And for George, that sliver of hope was enough to keep searching until his final breath. Forensic analysis in the 2000s added a chilling twist. Experts re-examined photos of the fire scene and noted the absence of soot on the upper walls, an indicator that the fire burned downward, not upward. Normal house fires start low and rise, but this one appeared to ignite near the roof. That's consistent with incendiary devices dropped from above or thrown onto the shingles. One retired arson investigator concluded, "This wasn't an accident. It was a controlled burn designed to destroy evidence, not people." If true, it means the children were already gone. The fire wasn't the cause of their disappearance. It was the cover-up. And whoever planned it knew exactly how to make 5 lives vanish without a trace and leave the world convinced they'd burn to ash. Jennie Sodder never accepted the official story. In her later years, she kept a scrapbook filled with letters, clippings, and maps marked with red pins. Every lead, every whisper. She'd stare at it for hours, whispering names. Martha, Jennie, Betty, Louise, Maurice. Her surviving children said she cried every Christmas Eve, lighting 5 extra candles at dinner. She died at 82, clutching a locket with all 10 children's baby photos. 5 of them forever lost to mystery. But her legacy lived on. Her grandchildren now run the Sodder Memorial Fund, offering rewards for credible tips and pushing for declassified FBI files. They've even partnered with genetic genealogists, hoping a distant cousin might unknowingly hold the key. Because in the age of DNA, even the unseen can be found. Could the children have survived and lived ordinary lives, never knowing their true past? It's possible. In cases like the 1950s Lost Boy of Kansas, later identified through DNA after 70 years, adoption rings forged new identities seamlessly. The Sodder kids, if taken young, might never have questioned their origins. One theory suggests they were placed in Catholic orphanages overseas, where records were sealed or destroyed. In 2015, a woman in Rome claimed her late mother resembled Betty Sodder and spoke fluent English despite being Italian-born. She submitted a DNA sample, but it was inconclusive. Still, the possibility remains. Somewhere in the world, a grandchild of the Sodders may walk unknowingly through life, carrying a secret written in their genes and a name they never knew was theirs. So what really happened on that cold Christmas night? Was it a tragic accident amplified by rumor? A hate-fueled arson that went horribly wrong? Or a meticulously planned abduction disguised as disaster? We may never know for certain, but this much is true. 5 children vanished, and the world accepted a story with too many holes to hold. The Sodder case endures not because of what was proven, but because of what was ignored. The cut phone lines, the missing ladder, the untouched doll, the photo with the watches. These aren't just details. They're cries from the past, begging to be heard. And as long as one person wonders what happened to Martha, Jennie, Betty, Louie, and Maurice, their story isn't over. It's still burning, quietly, in the unseen corners of history. One last clue emerged in 1989, the year Jennie Sodder died. A retired postal worker in Charleston confessed on his deathbed. He'd been paid $200 in 1946 to intercept all mail sent to the Sodder home for 6 months. He never knew why, until years later when he saw a news report about the missing children. Among the letters he destroyed was one postmarked from Montreal, with a child's drawing of 5 stick figures holding hands. On the back, scribbled in pencil, "We miss you." The postal worker's family confirmed the story, but without physical proof, it remains another whisper lost to time. Yet for the Sodder descendants, it's more than a rumor. It's proof someone out there knew the children were alive and tried to keep them silent. Could modern technology finally solve the case? In 2023, a team of genetic genealogists launched a public campaign. If any descendant of the Sodder children exists, a simple DNA test could reconnect them to their bloodline. They created a secure database, partnering with labs that specialize in cold cases. So far, no matches, but the effort continues. Meanwhile, amateur investigators have used AI to age progress the children's faces into adulthood, then cross-reference them with missing persons from the 1950s to 1960s. A few leads surfaced in Canada and Florida, but none panned out. Still, the tools are better now than ever before. And as long as DNA exists, in a grandchild, a cousin, even a distant relative, the truth has a chance to rise from the ashes. The Sodder home site remains untouched by developers. The family refuses to sell. Instead, they maintain a quiet memorial, 5 white crosses, a brick path, and that haunting billboard. Missing Sodder children. Every Christmas Eve, Strangers leave toys, letters, and candles. Some come from thousands of miles away, drawn by the mystery, the tragedy, the unshakable feeling that justice was never served. Local schools teach the case in history classes, not as folklore, but as a lesson in how easily truth can be buried when no one fights for it. And the Sodder name? It's no longer just a family. It's a symbol of loss, yes, but also of relentless hope. Because as long as someone remembers their names, they are not gone. They are only unseen. So why does this case still grip us? Because it defies explanation. No bodies, no credible suspects, no closure. In an age where satellites track every move and data never dies, the complete erasure of 5 children feels impossible. Yet it happened. And that impossibility is what fuels the obsession. Was it crime, conspiracy, or just a perfect storm of failure and fear? We may never know. But the Sodder mystery endures because it asks a question we all fear. If your family vanished tomorrow, would the world truly look for them? Or would it accept the first easy answer and let the truth fade into smoke? If you've been moved by this story, you're not alone. Thousands believe the Sodder children deserve more than a footnote in true crime history. You can help keep their memory alive. Leave a comment below with your theory. Share this video with someone who loves unsolved mysteries. And if you're watching on December 24th, light a candle for Martha, Jennie, Betty, Louis, and Maurice. Because after nearly 80 years, they're still waiting to be found. This is The Unseen Case. Thank you for watching, and for never looking away.